Welcome to Starbound. My name is the Voice Ogre. I'll be your narrator today. But before we get started with the video, let me ask to see if you're subscribed real quick. If you're not, it's fine, but it's free, and it will let you know whenever we post new videos. Thank you. General Stream Malenko was not expecting much from the Dirtlings. They were a species with no natural weapons or armor, and all accounts described them as agreeable and friendly. They were nice. That would make them an excellent addition to the Galactic Alliance of Worlds, but it wouldn't make them warriors. No one ever killed anyone by being nice. General Malenko was a Stralder, a 2.5-meter tall, gray, hairless biped. His eyes were black. His limbs were long and thin. His uniform was a form-fitting black nanocomposite that doubled as light armor. The Stralder General's long legs carried him swiftly down the corridor of the human military facility. The walls were a stark military gray, adorned only with the occasional unit insignia. It was all very utilitarian. Odd. He'd been led to believe that humans loved their decor. General Carl Sutherland waited at the end of the hall. The human was impressively tall for his species, though still a head shorter than Malenko. His dark blue uniform was immaculate, decorated with 3 stars that marked his rank. He had very short, dark hair with a hint of gray at his temples, and a thick, bony jaw and hard eyes. Very hard eyes. Weren't humans supposed to be friendly?
General Malenko.
Sutherland's voice was a gravelly rumble.
Welcome to Camp Lejeune. I trust your journey was comfortable?
As comfortable as one could expect on a high-gravity world. Malenko replied smoothly, refusing to show how plain dirt's heavier gravity taxed his frame. Dirt generated a third more gravity than his homeworld. He gestured at the man who had led him to the other general.
Thank you for your assistance. You may go. Colonel Baca is my chief of staff,
Sutherland told him.
He'll be helping with the tour.
Where Sutherland was a stern granite, Baca's eyes held a spark of humor despite his professional bearing.
My apologies.
Malenko inclined his head slightly.
Now then, shall we get down to business? The Alliance Defense Force needs to assess your military capabilities so we can determine how best to integrate your forces.
He gave an apologetic smile.
Truthfully, I'm not expecting much. You Dirtlings have a reputation as peacemakers, mostly harmless. Still, every species that joins the Alliance has to contribute to the military, so I will find a place for you one way or the other.
Dirtlings? General Sutherland raised an eyebrow.
That is the name of your world, isn't it?
Asked the Stralder.
Planet Dirt. It's Earth,
said Sutherland. Which kinda translates to dirt, Colonel Baca admitted. But dirt's got different connotations.
As for our reputation,
Sutherland's eyes gleamed.
I think you're in for a surprise. There's no need to posture.
Malenko allowed a trace of condescension to color his tone.
Your people do not have natural weapons or armor, and you're not known for aggression. There's no shame in such things.
Before Malenko could respond, sharp footfalls echoed down the hall. A powerfully built human approached, moving with a predatory grace despite his bulky frame. His face was expressionless, but something about him gave Malenko an impression of murderous rage and barely contained violence. He wore green dress pants and a khaki button-up shirt. Both were perfectly pressed. His black dress shoes had been shined to a mirror sheen. A wide-brimmed green hat clung to his bald head.
Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Nauda, reporting as ordered, sir.
The human snapped to attention, his voice carrying enough force to make Malenko's aide flinch.
At ease, Staff Sergeant,
Sutherland said. He gestured at Malenko.
Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Nauta will be assisting in the tour. He can answer any questions that you have about the Stellar Marine Corps training.
The drill instructor said nothing. He stood with his feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind his back. His gaze fixated on Malenko with unnerving intensity. The Stralder cleared his throat.
Yes, well, perhaps we should begin with a demonstration of your physical capabilities. Nothing too strenuous, of course. We wouldn't want to overtax your troops.
Of course not. Sutherland's voice was perfectly neutral, but Malenko caught Baca and Nauda exchanging glances.
Staff Sergeant, please escort us to the training grounds.
Aye, sir. Nauta pivoted sharply and began marching down the hall. his parade ground stride eating up the distance. As they walked, Malenko studied the humans. They'd been polite enough, but nothing like the overly friendly creatures Malenko had met before. These humans struck him as serious professionals, maybe even dangerous. Well, sort of. Humans were still new and fairly primitive. Part of the reason the Alliance had welcomed them was that they felt humans needed protection. Still, duty was duty. Every species in the Alliance had to contribute to their collective defense, even if some contributions were merely symbolic. He would observe their quaint military traditions, write a diplomatic report highlighting their enthusiasm while downplaying their limitations, and recommend that they be assigned to support roles far away from any actual combat.
You seem deep in thought, General,
Sutherland commented as they walked.
Simply considering how best to utilize your forces.
Malenko replied smoothly.
You might want to see what we can do first, sir.
Baka's eyes twinkled with barely suppressed mirth.
No sense making plans when you don't have all the information.
Or any information.
Nauta muttered, just loud enough to hear. They emerged into bright sunlight. A large group of humans in exercise clothing were assembling on a track. They were dressed in green shirts and shorts and black shoes. They looked fit, but lacked the predatory grace Malenko had seen in drill instructor Staff Sergeant Nauta. Another human stood near the group. He wore the same green pants and khaki shirt and wide-brimmed hat as Nauta. Another drill instructor, most likely. The drill instructor stood like a statue, watching the other humans with an expression somewhere between mild disdain and cold fury.
Shall we begin?
Sutherland gestured toward the assembled troops.
I believe you wanted to see what humans were capable of. Indeed.
Malenko straightened his spine, ignoring the strain of Earth's gravity.
Show me your warriors, General. Show me what these dirtlings can do.
The morning sun cast long shadows across the track as the platoon of Marines lined up for their physical fitness test. Malenko watched with mild interest as Staff Sergeant Nauta nodded at the other drill instructor.
Attention!
The other instructor boomed. All the other humans froze, then stood at attention.
This will be a standard PFT. You will be observed by an Alliance representative. He wants to see what you recruits can do. You will show him. You will not embarrass me. Is that understood?
Sir, yes, sir!
Shouted the humans.
I can't hear you!
The drill instructor's voice cracked like a whip.
Sir, yes, sir!
The terrified recruits thundered.
This is a standard PFT,
Sutherland explained.
5-kilometer run followed by pull-ups and crunches. Every Marine must pass this test regularly to remain in service. Nearly 5 kilometers.
Malenko blinked.
That seems excessive for regular testing.
Colonel Baka's lips twitched.
We find it helps maintain readiness.
A whistle shrieked, and the Marines surged forward as one. Malenko watched their form with professional interest. The humans moved efficiently, each stride eating up ground with practiced ease. Their breathing was controlled. The Marines showed no signs of serious fatigue. They weren't even breathing particularly hard. The first of them crossed the finish line at 16 minutes and 3 seconds. The rest of the platoon finished within the next 5 minutes, the slowest time being 21 minutes and 18 seconds. It wasn't impressive in terms of raw speed, 15 kilometers per hour, give or take. Malenko could run more than twice that fast in short bursts. But to maintain that pace for 5 whole kilometers, no stroller could do that.
Impressive endurance,
he admitted.
We also do regular force marches,
Baka said.
20 kilometers with 60 kilos of gear.
Malenko's spine twinged in sympathy. 60 kilograms? In this gravity?
How often do you do that? Monthly at first,
Sutherland replied.
More frequently during advanced training.
The Marines had already moved to the pull-up bars. Malenko watched as they took turns executing perfect repetitions, muscles flexing smoothly under sweat-sheened skin. Most managed between 15 and 20 pull-ups before dropping down. One particularly broad-shouldered Marine cranked out 30.
What about your strength training?
Malenko asked, trying to maintain his professional detachment.
Surely you don't expect your troops to match more physically robust species. The average Marine can lift and carry 100 kilos.
Sutherland stated matter-of-factly. Malenko couldn't quite hide his shock. 100 kilos under dirt gravity? That was a lot of weight. He never would have guessed such a small and soft-looking species would be that far above his own strength.
You seem surprised, General.
Bach observed with that same hint of amusement.
Your physical capabilities are greater than I expected,
Malenko admitted.
Oh, we knew.
Sutherland's smile bordered on smug.
Perhaps you'd like to see our rifle range next.
Malenko nodded, grateful for the change of subject.
Lead the way,
he said, falling in behind Sutherland as they left the training field. The crack of gunfire echoed across the rifle range as Marines cycled through their positions. Malenko's sensitive hearing picked up on the sharp report of each shot, along with the metallic ping of bullets striking targets. The weapons seemed primitive, simple polymer constructions that used chemical propellants to launch projectiles.
AR-193 battle rifles,
Colonel Baca explained, noticing Malenko's scrutiny.
Standard issue for all Marines.
Malenko frowned at the weapons.
I don't see any optics, he observed. Do you not have targeting assistance?
We use iron sights, Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Nauda explained. All basic Marine training is conducted without aid or enhancement. Staff Sergeant Nauda's voice was matter-of-fact, but Malenko still heard a hint of pride.
A Marine must be able to fight and kill without relying on technology.
General Sutherland gestured to Staff Sergeant Nauda.
Colonel, have one of the Marines bring their rifle over for inspection.
Nauda nodded. His voice thundered across the range.
Recruit Bonias! Front and center!
A broad-shouldered Marine jogged over, his rifle held at port arms. His expression crackled with nervousness until he got closer and he schooled himself.
Sir!
Bonias snapped to attention, presenting his weapon for inspection. Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Nauda took it. He checked it that it was unloaded, and then presented it to General Malenko.
The AR-193 is a standard issue rifle of Stellar Marine Corps,
the Staff Sergeant intoned.
It can field a wide variety of ammunition, from standard 5.56 to armor-piercing, incendiary, and high-explosive rounds. It is accurate and effective up to 800 meters. The AR-193 is designed to be reliable and easily maintained in the field. It can be fired in most atmospheres or the vacuum of space. It can be used in liquid environments as well, but only with specialized ammunition.
Malenko took the rifle, surprised by its solid construction. The design was simple but robust, clearly built to withstand harsh conditions. The barrel was long and heavy, suggesting an emphasis on accuracy over rapid-fire capability.
Tell me, recruit.
Malenko turned over the weapon in his hands.
How accurate is this weapon in your hands?
Barias shifted slightly.
I am only average, sir. I can reliably hit targets at 500 meters, but my shot groups at that range are almost 8 centimeters wide.
Shot groups?
Malenko looked to Staff Sergeant Nauda for clarification.
A shot group is how close a Marine's shots are to each other on target.
Nauda explained with parade ground precision.
Tighter groups means more accuracy. The average Marine maintains 5-centimeter groups at 200 meters. Up to 10 centimeters is acceptable at 500 meters.
Malenko's head snapped around.
You mean to tell me that your warriors are expected to place shots within 10 centimeters at half a kilometer distance without optical assistance?
That's the standard. Nauda's face was impressive. One shot, one kill. The Strahler general handed the rifle back to Barias, his mind racing. Most species relied heavily on targeting computers and enhancement packages for long-range accuracy. The idea of achieving such precision with nothing but shaped metal and practiced skill seemed absurd. He watched as Barias returned to the firing line. The corporal settled into his position, his breathing steady and controlled. 5 shots rang out in quick succession. When the target was retrieved, all 5 rounds had struck within a hand's width of each other.
That's impressive,
Malenko admitted. The implications were troubling. If humans could achieve such accuracy without technological assistance, what were they capable of with modern enhancements?
Would you like to try it for yourself?
Sutherland offered.
Get a feel for what our troops work with?
Malenko was tempted, but his pride held him back. Dirt's gravity was already taxing his strength. He had no desire to embarrass himself attempting to handle a human weapon.
Perhaps another time. As you wish.
Sutherland's tone was neutral, but Malenko caught a hint of a knowing smile.
Shall we continue? There's much more to see.
Shouts and the sharp crack of wood on wood echoed across the training field as Marines squared off against each other. Two combatants balanced on a narrow beam suspended a meter above a mud pit, each wielding what appeared to be padded poles.
Pugil stick training.
General Sutherland explained as they approached.
It simulates close combat with rifles equipped with bayonets. Bayonets? Is a blade that attaches to the end of a rifle.
Staff Sergeant Nauta clarified. His eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction.
And turns the weapon into a spear for close quarters combat.
Malenko's aide shifted uncomfortably.
You mean your warriors willingly engage in melee combat with guns?
Sometimes you run out of ammunition,
Baca said with a slight shrug.
or sometimes getting up close and personal is more effective than shooting.
On the beam, one Marine lunged forward, the padded end of his pugil stick driving towards his opponent's midsection. The other fighter deflected the strike and countered, the two humans moving with fluid grace despite their precarious position. The exchange lasted only seconds. A lightning-fast series of strikes ended with one Marine knocked off balance. He hit the mud with a wet splat, drawing cheers and good-natured jeers from the watching troops.
Next!
A drill instructor barked. Two new Marines took positions on the beam.
The elevation adds difficulty.
Sutherland noted.
Forces them to maintain balance while fighting. Builds instincts that saves lives in real combat.
Malenko watched as the new pair began their duel. Their movements weren't perfect. If anything, they looked a little clumsy, like they were still learning.
How much time do you spend on this type of training?
He asked.
Close combat's a fundamental skill,
Baca replied.
Every Marine must be proficient, regardless of their primary specialty.
Another bout ended. The loser went down hard, but came up grinning despite being covered in mud.
I begin to see why you focus so heavily on physical conditioning,
he said to Sutherland.
This type of combat requires significant stamina. Everything we do builds on everything else,
Sutherland replied.
Running builds endurance for long fights. The strength training lets them handle their weapons effectively. The discipline learned in marksmanship applies to close combat.
It's all connected,
Baca added.
Every aspect of training reinforces the others.
Your troops seem to be enjoying themselves,
Malenko remarked.
Though I question the practical application of these skills in modern warfare.
That's because you haven't seen them in real combat yet.
Nauta's voice held dark promise.
A Marine with a bayonet's a force of nature.
Malenko was saved from responding by Sutherland's intervention.
Speaking of combat skills, I believe we have another demonstration prepared. Something a bit more intensive.
The Strahler general nodded, falling in beside Sutherland as they left the pugil stick area. The next training area was a large matted space surrounded by racks of training equipment. A massive human stood waiting for them, nearly as tall as Malenko himself. His broad frame made the other Marines look tiny by comparison. Despite his intimidating size, his face bore a friendly, open smile.
General Malenko, meet Sergeant Littles,
Sutherland said.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Little's voice was surprisingly gentle for someone his size.
I'll be demonstrating some of the aspects of the Marine Corps martial arts program today. Martial arts?
Malenko inquired.
It's combat techniques developed over thousands of years.
Littles explained, his enthusiasm evident.
We draw from many different disciplines. Judo, Krav Maga, boxing, Muay Thai, and so on. Each style brings its own strengths to the program.
Colonel Baca stepped forward.
Humans have been finding different ways to turn their bodies into weapons for most of our history. There are hundreds of different fighting styles, each adapted for different situations and needs.
The Marine martial arts program uses the most effective techniques from those styles,
Staff Sergeant Nauta added, his usual intensity seeming to increase as he spoke.
We teach Marines to kill, disable, or restrain enemies in the most efficient manner possible, adjusting the level of force to match mission requirements.
Malenko noted how even the normally stoic Nauta seemed to defer to Littles in this environment.
A demonstration, perhaps?
Little's smile widened. Of course. He gestured to 3 combat training drones positioned nearby. These are training dummies. They're designed to perfectly simulate a human combatant. The sergeant took position in the center of the mat.
His cheerful expression never wavered as the drones activated, their synthetic muscles whirring as they moved to surround him. What followed was unlike anything Malenko had ever seen. The drones attacked as one, but Littles was already moving. He dashed to the side, keeping them from reaching him at once. The closest drone went for a grapple. Littles was faster. He snapped its neck. The second drone managed to grab his arm, but Littles turned into the hold. There was a series of ugly popping sounds as the drone's arms bent in ways that they weren't designed for, followed by a devastating kick that shattered its knee joint. The third drone threw a kick, but Littles ducked under his leg and tackled it. He rolled the drone over, pinning it to the ground with one arm, bent at an uncomfortable angle. All of this happened in the span of perhaps 5 seconds. 3 opponents. Nauda's voice held grim satisfaction. 1 killed by cervical fracture, 1 disabled by multiple joint breaks, 1 captured for interrogation, each dealt with appropriately for the tactical situation. Malenko stared at the results of Little's demonstration. The sergeant's breathing was slow and even. His smile had never faltered. The Strahler had never seen such brutal violence dispensed with such a friendly demeanor.
Most impressive, Malenko managed. Though surely this was choreographed. A prepared sequence?
No, sir, Littles replied cheerfully. The drone's attack patterns are randomized. Would you like to see another demonstration? With 4 opponents, maybe?
That won't be necessary,
Malenko said quickly. The contrast between Little's warm smile and lethal capabilities was deeply unsettling.
Can all of your Marines do such a thing?
Every Marine receives this training, General, Baka said. Sergeant Littles is one of our instructors, but any Marine you meet should be able to do the same.
Some degree of combat training is common in most militaries,
Malenko observed, trying to maintain his professional demeanor.
Is that so, sir?
Littles perked up.
Does that mean that you've got some moves? I would love a demonstration, sir.
Sergeant?
General Sutherland warned. Sorry, sir. Sergeant Littles stood at attention.
Perhaps we should move on,
Malenko suggested, trying not to sound too eager to leave.
Of course,
Sutherland replied.
We still got a lot to cover.
He paused, tilting his head in thought.
Unless you'd like to try a few techniques yourself. I think the sergeant here would love a spar. Another time,
Malenko said firmly, already moving toward the exit. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hilly training ground as Malenko watched a platoon of Marines moving into position. Their objective was simple. Take the fortified position at the top of the hill. The defending force had excellent cover and clear fields of fire. It would be a challenging assault.
We run this drill regularly,
Sutherland explained.
Different terrain and defensive configurations each time. The recruits have to adapt their tactics to the situation.
A whistle blew. The platoon began their advance, moving in 4-person fire teams. 1 person would advance, while others provided suppressing fire, then hold position while another team moved up. The coordination was impressive. Each team seemed to know instinctively when to move and when to provide cover. Bursts of red appeared as defenders opened fire. 1 Marine went down, the paint round marking a clean hit on his chest. His team immediately adjusted, maintaining their suppressing fire while dragging their wounded comrade to cover.
Sim rounds,
Staff Sergeant Nauda explained, noticing Malenko's concern.
Training ammunition that marks hits with paint, and lets us evaluate effectiveness without actually killing anyone.
They hurt like hell, though, Baka added with a slight smile.
That seems excessive for a training scenario,
Malenko noted.
Pain is an excellent teacher,
replied Staff Sergeant Nauda. The attack continued, but the defenders had well-prepared positions and excellent coordination. Despite several determined attempts, the attacking platoon was eventually eliminated without reaching their objective. A drill instructor stormed onto the field, his voice carrying clearly across the training ground as he berated the failed assault team. Malenko couldn't help but be impressed by the sheer volume and creativity of the human's profanity.
They'll run it again,
Sutherland said calmly.
And again, until they get it right. How many attempts do you usually allow?
Malenko asked. As many as it takes, Baka replied. We're not here to meet quotas. We're here to make sure our Marines can take that hill when it matters.
Every Marine is a rifleman first.
Nada's voice held fierce pride.
The recruits aren't just learning to fight, they're learning to fight together. using tactics and teamwork to accomplish their objective.
Malenko watched as the platoon reset. Some of the humans were limping or rubbing themselves where they'd been hit. They still took their positions quickly and without complaint. Once again, they launched an assault up the hill.
I see what you mean about endurance, he said finally. You are teaching them to ignore pain and to persevere in the face of failure. We're teaching them not to quit,
Staff Sergeant Nauta corrected.
A Marine accomplishes the mission, always, no matter what.
As they walked to the next area, General Malenko asked a question that had been bothering him.
Your training seems harsh. Are injuries common?
Very, said General Sutherland.
Serious injuries are rare, but sprains and broken bones are par for the course.
Malenko blinked. The humans didn't think broken bones were serious?
And deaths? He pressed. Do humans die during the training? Sometimes, Sutherland admitted. It's rare, but it happens. That's...
Malenko stared at the man.
That is barbaric. Unacceptable.
His own military would never tolerate such losses during peacetime exercises.
It's unavoidable.
Sutherland's voice was firm.
The whole point of training is to push Marines to their mental and physical limits. We take every precaution we can, but accidents happen. Sometimes we discover medical conditions we didn't know about. Sometimes we have equipment failures, and sometimes somebody screws up. But why? Malenko pressed. Why must you push them so hard? Surely basic competence would be sufficient for most military needs? Basic competence?
Staff Sergeant Nauta stepped forward, his eyes blazing.
We are Marines, General Malenko. The best of the best. No one who settles for basic competence has any place in my beloved Corps.
Staff Sergeant, General Sutherland warned. Drill Instructor Nauta stepped back, still radiating fury.
As for why, the drill instructor continued, there are 3 reasons. First, we need to weed out the weak. Training simulates the stress of combat so that we can find and remove people who can't handle that stress before our lives depend on them. Second, we need to build the discipline, mental toughness, and physical capabilities our Marines will need to accomplish their mission. You can't do that by playing it safe. You have to push them past their limits. Show them that they are capable of more than they thought possible.
Malenko noted how even Sutherland and Baca seemed to defer to Nauta on this topic. The staff sergeant's usual intensity had transformed into something deeper, more fundamental.
And the third reason?
Malenko asked. Sutherland exchanged glances with Baca.
The third reason... that's something we would like to show you rather than tell you.
You've seen our basic training, Baca added. Now, it's time to show you what Marines become after that training.
I don't understand,
Malenko admitted.
Follow me, Sutherland said grimly. There's a facility that you need to see.
They walked in silence for several minutes, eventually reaching a heavy security door. Sutherland placed his hand on a scanner, spoke a command phrase, and the door slid open with a soft hiss.
What you're about to see,
the general hesitated.
It's not exactly classified, but this isn't something we usually share. Why not?
Malenko asked. Seeing our basic training's scary enough, Colonel Baca explained. When you see what comes after.
The Alliance thinks that we're mostly harmless, said Sutherland. They don't realize what humans are really capable of.
The security door closed behind them with a final sounding thud. Malenko followed his escorts down a sterile white corridor, noting the increased layers of security they passed through. Whatever they were going to show him, it was clearly something the humans considered extremely sensitive. He placed his hand on the final scanner. The door slid open, revealing a sight that made Malenko's breath catch in his throat.
Welcome,
Sutherland said quietly,
to the Enhancement Division.
The facility stretched out before them, a vast chamber filled with medical equipment and monitoring stations. Marines lay on examination tables, surrounded by scientists in white coats and complex machinery. Some were conscious, others appeared to be in medically induced sleep states.
What is this?
Malenko demanded, his eyes fixed on a Marine whose muscles were visibly shifting beneath his skin.
The third reason,
General Sutherland replied.
combat enhancement. We wouldn't dare attempt these procedures on Marines who hadn't proven themselves capable of handling extreme stress.
He gestured to a nearby scientist.
Major Hubble will explain.
The scientist practically bounced over to them, his excitement palpable.
Astralda! It is nice to meet you, General. I have never met an alien before. Can you tell me?
Major,
Sutherland interrupted firmly.
the enhancements, please.
Yes, of course.
Hubble's enthusiasm didn't diminish, but it focused.
We use a combination of gene therapy, nanotechnology, and surgical treatments to enhance human physiology. The results are, well, pretty spectacular, if I do say so myself.
How spectacular?
Malenko asked, unable to tear his eyes away from the procedures being performed around him.
The treatments triple reaction speed and multiply strength and endurance by a factor of 5.
Hubble said proudly.
That's why the basic training's so intense.
Staff Sergeant Nauda added.
The enhancement multiplies what's already there. So, stronger and more capable they are before enhancement, the better the final result.
General Malenko considered that.
He froze. Wait. Are you telling me that your Marines can run over 1 kilometer a minute and lift a literal metric ton? That's right,
said General Sutherland. He nodded towards Major Baca.
Show him. Hit the wall.
Yes, sir, said the Major. Malenko didn't see him move. There was a loud crack. Baca was several meters away. His fist had punched through the white-painted stone of a wall. He drew it out slowly and reappeared next to Malenko. He held up his fist. There was blood on his knuckles, but the wounds closed in seconds. Malenko stared in horror. Major Hubble nodded enthusiastically.
We also enhance balance, reflexes, hand-eye coordination, and all 5 senses.
Malenko stared at a Marine receiving an injection that made his skin ripple and change color.
This can't be safe. It isn't,
Sutherland said bluntly.
We'll lose some Marines during the enhancement process. About 1 in 600.
Those of us who survive, Baca added quietly, become something else. Something more than human.
Modern Marines are literal super soldiers,
Hubble declared with evident pride.
Each one is worth a small army in combat capability. Would you like to see the testing footage?
I think I've seen enough,
Malenko said weakly. The scientist's face fell slightly.
But I haven't even shown you the neural interface systems or the reintegration. Did you know that we can regrow entire limbs now? The cellular reconstruction process is absolutely...
Major,
Sutherland cut him off again.
I think the General needs time to process what he's already seen.
Malenko nodded gratefully. His mind was reeling from the implications. The Marines he had watched training earlier were already impressive, but this was madness. A groan from nearby drew his attention. A Marine's eyes snapped open on one of the med tables. He was trying to scream, but his clenched body wasn't taking in enough air to manage it. What came out was an anguished, grunting moan. One of the scientists rushed over and applied a sedative. Malenko swallowed.
Is that as painful as it looks? Pain is weakness leaving the body,
Staff Sergeant Nauda intoned.
Come on, General,
Sutherland said gently.
Let's give the doctors room to work.
They led Malenko back through the security doors. He moved in a daze, his mind reeling from the horror he'd just seen. You all right, General? Baca asked as they emerged into normal corridors.
I never imagined that you...
Malenko pulled himself together.
How could you do this to yourselves? That's just the start,
Sutherland told him.
We haven't even gone over the cybernetic implants yet.
Malenko's head snapped around. The what? Major Hubble had followed them out, practically vibrating with enthusiasm.
Oh yes, the cybernetics! The biological enhancements are just the foundation. Sir, every Marine also receives a full suite of embedded technology.
Embedded?
Malenko felt slightly faint.
The nanomachines are particularly fascinating.
Hubble continued, either missing or ignoring Malenko's distress.
They help Marines survive wounds that would normally be fatal. They accelerate healing, and they can even form small bladed weapons when needed. And then there's the neural computer systems that...
No. No.
Malenko cut him off.
I think that I've had enough for one day.
Are you sure?
The scientist looked disappointed.
I haven't even covered...
Major,
Sutherland interrupted firmly.
I believe you have patients to attend to.
Yes, of course.
Hubble's enthusiasm dimmed. Slightly.
Dismissed, Major,
Sutherland said, not unkindly. Hubble departed, still muttering about quantum states and neural pathways. Malenko watched him go, trying to process everything he'd learned.
All this pain,
He said finally.
the struggle, it's not what I expected. No, General,
Sutherland's voice was soft.
I'm sure it isn't.
He let out a breath.
Maybe we should call it a day. We can go over cybernetics and power armor and special weapons tomorrow. Power armor?
The Stralder frowned. You'll like it, Baka assured him. Power armor basically turns a Marine into a walking tank. He frowned. Have you seen tanks yet, sir? I think you like them.
Perhaps tomorrow.
Malenko suggested weakly.
Tomorrow, then.
Sutherland agreed.
We'll walk you back to your shuttle. I figured you'd want to sleep on your own ship where the gravity's more accommodating.
Malenko made his way back to his ship, his mind still reeling from everything he'd seen. A slow suspicion formed as he walked, a suspicion that hardened into a certainty. He stopped. The others stopped with him.
You lied to me,
said the Stralder.
You lied to all of us.
Lied? General Sutherland raised his eyebrows. How so?
You are supposed to be nice people,
Malenko said.
Friendly, mostly harmless. I came here expecting you to be unsuitable for combat.
He flashed back on the groaning Marine on the med table.
You are not harmless at all. We are not,
Sutherland confirmed.
Why?
Malenko demanded.
Why do all of this? Why hide it?
It was Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Nauta that answered.
The Stellar Marine Corps exists to protect humanity and its allies from those who would do us harm. We are the sword and the shield of the human race. Anything less than our best is unacceptable. And as for why we keep it hidden,
General Sutherland crossed his arms with a grimace.
Most species are like the Stralders, Malenko. Soft. They don't react well when they see who we are.
Humanity has a long history of extreme violence, sir, Baka explained. We have been fighting and killing since before we knew how to make fire. We invented genocide before we discovered agriculture.
You invented...
The Stralder's eyes widened in horror. The training, the violence, the experiments, they all fell into place. For the first time, General Malenko understood what humans truly were.
Ancestors preserve us, he breathed. You're not sapiens. You're slayers, like the Vexni.
The Vexni had been a nightmare. They'd slaughtered their way through a dozen worlds. They'd killed, they'd eaten, and the survivors had been enslaved. It had taken everything the Alliance had to drive them away. And Malenko still woke up in a cold sweat sometimes, wondering when they would come back.
We are nothing like the Vexni,
Sutherland snapped.
Humans aren't interested in conquering, enslaving, or eating anyone. We're better than that. We worked very hard for a long, long time to be better.
Marines are trained to kill, Staff Sergeant Nauta added, but only under specific conditions.
We have rules of engagement and codes of conduct.
We do not harm civilians, participate in torture, or any of the other things Slayer species are known for.
You're slayers,
Malenko repeated.
Hyper-aggressive predators. How could we not know? How could you hide it?
Oh, ancestors. Slayers. The humans were slayers and the Alliance had let them in. You see that? Baka quipped. That reaction? That right there is why we don't share this with you, sir.
It's true that we're a predator species,
Sutherland admitted.
but we're not slayers. Have you ever heard of a human attacking one of yours? We're not monsters. You are literally monsters,
Malenko argued. The thought sent a chill of dread up his legs. They were monsters, slayers, and he was alone with them. Sutherland noticed his concern.
Oh, for God's sakes, Malenko, calm down. No one's gonna hurt you.
We've dealt with the Vexni, too, said Staff Sergeant Nada. And the Hoth, and the Genouts as well. Enemies like that are why we have the Stellar Marine Corps.
We've done some, well, terrible things,
said Sutherland.
I won't deny it. But humans have been working for centuries to be more than that. We're explorers. We're seekers of knowledge.
Protectors of the weak, Staff Sergeant Nauta added. Look at it this way, said Colonel Baca. Which is better, to be born good, or to be born evil and become good through great effort? That's what we did, General. We worked our butts off to be the kind of people we want to be, instead of the savages we started out as. Malenko realized he was hyperventilating. He forced his breathing to slow down.
How did you hide this? How did we not know?
The humans looked at each other. It was Sutherland who spoke.
We didn't, at first. The first species we met were the Renee. We shared everything. They were terrified.
We didn't know about Slayer species, said Baca, or how everyone was scared of them.
The Renee tried to kill us,
Sutherland continued.
So did the Runo. Nearly every species that learned what we are attacked us. The ones that didn't ran away. They refused to speak with us. I am not sure that I blame them,
Malenko admitted.
Now, eventually our government came up with the Dalton Doctrine,
Sutherland continued.
We don't share our history, and we don't talk about what our military can do with other species. As far as the rest of the galaxy is concerned, we are friendly, harmless explorers.
They want us to be nice, Baca elaborated, until it's time to not be nice.
The doctrine worked,
said Sutherland.
We made friends, trading partners, and when the Alliance offered us membership, we jumped at the chance.
We really are nice people most of the time, said Baca. We want friends. We don't want to fight everyone or be alone in the universe. Malenko looked between the two humans. He frowned.
Then why are you telling me this? Why now? We're part of the Alliance now,
said Sutherland.
You came here in good faith to learn what we can do. Not mentioning this stuff is one thing, but we can't lie to our allies. We're better than that. This is a lot.
General Malenko ran a hand over his hairless head.
If the other species find out what you are, if they see what I saw...
He shook his head.
I don't know what they'll do. We know that, said Sutherland. It's a risk we'll have to take. He shrugged. It's not like we could hide our Marines forever, anyways. Sooner or later, the Vexna, someone like them, will show up again. I'd rather get this squared away now than have a diplomatic crisis in the middle of a war.
True. General Malenko frowned.
I will do what I can to help, if the rest of your capabilities match what I've already seen.
The thought made his knees weak.
I don't think we could stop you anyways.
It's not that bad, said Baca. There's a lot more of you than there are of us. Figured be an even fight. An even fight. The humans thought they could match the other 36 species in the Alliance all by themselves. Looking at them, Malenko was starting to believe it, too. Wait. Malenko's eyes narrowed in suspicion.
You ran simulations of a war between you and the Alliance?
Sir. Baca gave him an incredulous look. You're here to assess our military right now. Do you think we would do less?
I see.
Malenko inclined his head.
Don't worry, General,
Sutherland reassured him.
We are dangerous, but we're not slayers. You'll see. We'll be good friends. And if the Vexna come back,
his eyes glittered,
you'll find we are terrible enemies.
Malenko thought about that.
I'm not sure that's comforting,
he admitted. General Sutherland laughed.
Oh, it will be.
He came to a stop. Malenko's shuttle was only a few meters away.
Good night, General. We'll show you the power armor in the morning.
And the tanks, Chewbacca added. You'll like the tanks. Everyone loves the tanks.